Right, pull up a chair. We need to talk about Star Wars 1313. You remember the hype, right? 2012, E3. We all saw it. It looked like Uncharted, but in the absolute filth of Coruscant. No Jedi, no Chosen Ones, just blasters and bad decisions. It was the Star Wars game we'd been begging for since we were kids. And then, poof, gone, shuttered, erased. Now, if you go on Reddit or Twitter, everyone says the same thing. Disney bought it and killed it because they're corporate. But listen to me. That's the lazy version. I've been looking at the actual receipts, the internal timelines, and the legal filings. The death of 1313 wasn't a quick execution. It was a slow, messy bleed out. It was 3 specific wounds that most people completely miss. Today, I'm going to walk you through the autopsy. I'm going to show you exactly why this game went dead. And I'll tell you what, the final blow? It didn't even come from a developer. It came from a spreadsheet. Okay, first rule of this autopsy. We separate what's confirmed from what's assumed, and we put rumors in a sealed bag with a label on it. Because 1313 has been mythologized so hard that people talk about it like it shipped and got recalled, it didn't. What we actually have is a public reveal, public business moves, and a paper trail that tells you exactly how projects die when corporations change hands. And here's the hook you need to keep in your head. 1313 didn't die because one guy hit cancel. It died because, step by step, it lost the things a game needs to stay alive. Time, a studio, and then a reason to exist. And the first wound? It's hiding inside that beautiful E3 demo. So, E3 2012. What you saw, what we all saw, was a vertical slice. That's not me being pedantic, that's literally how AAA sells a vision. A vertical slice is basically, here's a chunk that looks finished so you can imagine the rest. It's proof of potential, not proof of completion. And this is where the internet quietly rewrote history. Over the years, that demo looked finished turned into the game was finished. But if a game is truly near release, you normally see signs, release windows, ratings boards, marketing ramps, pre-order pages, something. For 1313, what's confirmed is a reveal, footage, and then silence. That silence matters because it means 1313 was still fighting for air behind the scenes. Now, if 1313 wasn't basically done, why do people swear it was this close? Because the next wound makes it feel like it was. Here's the part people skip. Between the reveal and the studio shutdown, the ground under LucasArts was shifting, and inside the project itself, the identity of the game was still moving. A big claim you'll hear is, it was always a Boba Fett game. What's confirmed publicly at the reveal is that it's about a bounty hunter in level 1313. The Boba Fett angle? That's something that has been reported later by credible outlets and discussed in developer commentary, so I'll label it correctly. Corroborated reporting, not a press release. And if that pivot happened during development, which is what reporting suggests, that's not a cosmetic swap. That's story, cinematics, voice, character arc, marketing positioning, and time. And time is what you don't have when corporate ownership is about to change. Because when a company gets bought, projects don't die with explosions. They die with meetings. October 2012. Disney announces it's acquiring Lucasfilm. This is the moment the myth begins. Disney didn't like gritty Star Wars, but that's a vibe-based explanation. The autopsy explanation is colder and more consistent with how big companies actually behave. When acquisitions happen, there's an evaluation period. Budgets get questioned. Forecasts get challenged. Anything not nailed down looks risky. And 1313 was, by definition, risky. An expensive AAA project, still in development, being built at a studio whose future was about to be decided. This is where people imagine a villain. But most cancellations don't need villains. They need uncertainty. And 1313 was sitting in uncertainty like a ship in a storm. And then comes the second wound, the one nobody can argue with, because it's a confirmed public event. April 2013. Disney shuts down LucasArts as an internal development studio. That's confirmed. Layoffs, restructuring, public statements about shifting focus. And this is the moment 1313 becomes what I call a body without organs. Because a game doesn't exist as a single file you can drag into another folder. It exists as people, processes, pipelines, and momentum. When the studio is shut, you don't just pause the game, you remove the machine that was making it. So the question changes from, why did they cancel 1313, to what would it take to save it? And saving it requires someone to adopt it. This is where the third wound hits, because adoption isn't emotional, it's contractual. In 2013, Disney signs an exclusive deal for major Star Wars titles with Electronic Arts. That's confirmed, and it tells you how Disney wanted Star Wars games to work. Not Disney building them internally, but Disney licensing them out. So now picture 1313 sitting on the floor like an abandoned engine. To revive it, someone would have to take the project, fund it, staff it, integrate it into their tech stack, and be willing to own the risk. And that's before we even talk about the practical nightmare. Different teams, different tools, different assumptions, possibly unfinished systems behind the pretty demo. Even if the assets exist, finishing it is not press compile. It's basically restart production under a new roof on someone else's dime. And that's why this death feels so brutal. Because it's not canceled due to failure. It's canceled because it didn't fit the new business shape. Let me say it plainly. 1313 went dead because it stopped being convenient. Under LucasArts as a dev studio, 1313 could exist because there was an internal pipeline to carry it. Under Disney's new plan, licensing, 1313 becomes a weird in-between thing. Not a clean new project for a licensee to build, but not an internal project Disney wants to bankroll. And that brings us to the part people love to skip, the quiet proof of death. If you want to know when a company has truly moved on, you don't watch trailers, you watch trademarks. In 2014, the Star Wars 1313 trademark is marked abandoned. That's public record. Now, trademarks lapse for different reasons, sure, but in this context, it's a signal. It tells you they weren't actively protecting that name for a near-future product. No push to keep the identity alive. No, we'll come back to this. Just letting it go. And that's why the internet's version, Disney killed it, feels satisfying. It's simple. It's one villain. It fits in a tweet, but it's not an autopsy. The autopsy is a project still forming, hit by a corporate acquisition, followed by the closure of the studio, followed by a licensing model that didn't naturally adopt it, followed by legal indicators that the brand wasn't being maintained. But I know what you're thinking. Okay, then why do people still talk like it was the greatest Star Wars game ever? Because the demo did something dangerous. It showed a version of Star Wars we don't get often. Underworld grime, criminal economy, Coruscant as a place you can smell. It looked expensive. It looked confident. It looked like the franchise had grown up with us. And when something like that vanishes, your brain fills the missing parts with perfection. You don't imagine the boring levels. You don't imagine cut content. You don't imagine bugs. You imagine the best possible version, because the only thing you ever saw was the highlight reel. That's not stupidity, that's human. And this is where the myth mutates into a whole second storyline. It got revived later, so let's tag that properly. You'll hear people connect 1313 to later canceled Star Wars projects, especially the Visceral Games project often referred to as Ragtag. Here's the fact-safe way to say it. Visceral did work on a narrative Star Wars project, and it was canceled in 2017. That's confirmed. But Ragtag was 1313 resurrected is not something we can state as confirmed. There may be shared DNA in tone or ambition, but direct continuity is not officially documented in a clean, provable way. So I'm not going to sell you fanfiction as fact. We're here for causes of death. So final question, what actually killed 1313? If you had to write it on a coroner's report in one line. Cause of death, loss of institutional support during a business model change. Translation, the project didn't fail on screen, it failed on paper. Wound 1, the game is known publicly through a demo, not proof of completion. Wound 2, the corporate ownership changes, and risk tolerance changes with it. Wound 3, the development studio is shut down, and the licensing strategy doesn't naturally adopt a half-built internal project, and the paperwork later tells you it wasn't being preserved for a comeback. That's the bleed out. No single dramatic moment, just oxygen getting cut off, piece by piece. And the most haunting part? This is why 1313 will always be famous, even if it would have been just good, because it represents the exact moment modern AAA reality slammed into a dream project. A gritty Star Wars underworld game, trapped between eras, old Lucasfilm internal culture, and new corporate licensing logic. It didn't die because it was hated, it died because it didn't fit. And yeah, somewhere, the internet will always insist there was a near-finished masterpiece locked in a vault. But the receipts we can actually stand on say something more depressing and more real. When the studio disappears, the game goes with it. And when the spreadsheet says risk, the dream gets buried. That's the autopsy. That's why it went dead.